Hello YouTube friends and welcome back to my channel. I was just doing a little bit of organising and sorting supplies and I realised that I haven't told you about when me and my sister was doing some Indian block printing. I was just putting my supplies into this bag. This is where I'm going to keep all of my bag handles which I really need to get around to making a few. And this is a bag that I Indian block printed on a little crafting day that I had with my sister. And I remember at the time when I posted about it on my Instagram stories, a lot of people said that they was interested in hearing about what we did and how it went. And in case you're new to the channel, hello, my name is Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life. Anywhere that you can find me is listed down in the description box below, including exclusive content over on my Patreon account. Now I know you're going to ask about this star that is up on the wall there. So that is a pattern by Lo and Behold Stitchery called the Knitted Star. And I recently did a workshop in a quilt shop in Warwick called the Quilter's Den. And I vlogged that whole process over on my Patreon account. So that was this week's video. And hopefully that will be a quilt for my sister. Also up on my design board I've got my two hometown quilt blocks. Those are both vlogs here on YouTube and you might catch some glimpses of this. This is something that me and my sister put together yesterday when she was here for the afternoon. This is just using a mini charm pack called Adamstown. It's by Moda and she just wanted a little mug rug pot holder type of thing, so I need to sew that together. Anyway, we haven't come to discuss that. I've come to talk about my Indian block printing endeavours. So if you remember back in August for the Festival of Quilts, I bought a starter kit from the Indian block printing company. And what really inspired this purchase was that my dad had bought back some blocks from India. Most years he goes to India as that is where he holidays most years. And I knew that the Indian Block Printing Co, they did like demonstrations on their stall. I've seen them in previous years and I've always sort of given them a wide berth because at that point I was like, I don't need a new hobby, I don't need a new hobby. But this was just a blessing that was given to me. So when I arrived at the stall, I told the lovely gentleman who I believe is the co-owner of the business, I told him about these blocks that my dad had given me and he sent me away with like some sponges and this little like pad that you put underneath for when you're doing prints. And he said, go home and use any paints that you've got, even if it's just acrylic paints, print it onto paper to make sure that the blocks that you have will actually do a good print. Because obviously not all Indian block prints are equal, but it turned out that the prints were absolutely stunning. I was so happy with how they came out. So I went back the next day, showed them to him, and they do like a starter kit where you get, I think, 5 paints. It might be either 3 or 5 or 4. You get a number of paints and then you can get stamps up to the value of a certain amount. Again, I can't remember. It might be stamps up to the value of £35 or £50. Can't remember. It was August, remember. So, and then you get that with a paint tray, sponges, everything that you would need essentially to go home and start block printing. So we knew that we had these blocks from my dad and they were very much traditional Indian designs. So I wanted some to extend what we already had. And then my sister wanted to get her own starter kit. So we decided to sort of conquer and divide. She got ones that was a bit different and different colours and stuff like that. So we both got a variety. We had no duplicates. So we knew that once we did it together, got together and did it, we would have a good variety. And that was the first like making day that we had after the Festival of Quilts. We was very excited to do it. So the first thing that we did was we got to grips with how much pressure you needed to apply. So what you do is you take a sponge, you dab the paint on and you have to kind of dab it off so that you're not applying a big blob of paint onto your block. So you dab it off and make sure you get a nice even coat on the block. And then using the foam pad underneath, you pop it on and you use a bit of a rocking technique back and forth, side to side, so that you can make sure that all of the paint is going onto the paper or the fabric. We decided for our test runs, we just used some paper that we had to make sure they all printed, to have a look how the colours come out as well, just to have a play around. So that was what we did first. And then we decided to dive straight in with a tea towel. So we thought a tea towel would be fabulous because first of all, we liked the designs on the stall. They had lots of fabric examples where it was full coverage and it was random prints all over, and we both really liked that, and we thought it'd be a good idea to get to grips with things, and this is the tea towel that we created first of all. And the way that we did this is I would just use one stamp at a time. So let's say if it was one of the flower stamps, I stamped lots of the flowers out. Again, still using the foam block underneath, all the same technique for paper and for fabric. They're just pretty much the same technique. Stamped loads out, and then I used all of my big stamps that I had because I had a variety of bigger stamps. And we also then had smaller stamps. So I went back in over certain areas to fill in the gaps really with the smaller stamps that we both had. I used a variety of colours. We did have a black. I didn't use any black on this, but my sister used black on her tea towel, and hopefully you'll see in some of the later footage that is just absolutely stunning. It really stands out really nice. On the stand as well, when we was at the quilt show, they also had wrapping paper that they had printed with some Christmas designs, and I thought that was really good. It's a good way, just Christmas paper, brown paper. It's a really good way just to jazz up your wrapping. Now, all of these fabrics are permanent once you heat set them, so you just need to put them under an iron to heat set them. We say that, but when we moved on to our second item, which was a pouch each, this was the pouch that I made. So I decided to just use one design and try and tessellate it as if it were a hexagon. It was quite tricky because this one has a box bottom, so it was a bit tricky trying to deal with all the layers there in the corner, but I'm really happy with how it looks out. And I'm going to put a project in here today, I think. Now, I remember setting all of these aside so I could show you, but then I never actually showed you. Going back to the permanent of the ink. So when we moved on to our second item, which was the pouch, my sister went straight in with a black stamp and did something wrong. I think she smudged it or dropped the stamp, something like that, where there ended up being a misprint, let's call it. So straight away we ran into the kitchen, put it under cold water because we thought warm water might help with the heat setting. Put it under with cold water, washing up liquid all over it, started scrubbing it. It didn't come out. Left it soaking in the sink for half an hour or so, didn't come out. Still soaking wet, so she put it in a carrier bag to take home with her, put it straight into her washing machine, still hasn't come out. It has faded a little bit, but she says it's only very slightly, so what she's hoping to do is print over the top and the design will just be like a shadow in the background. So I have no worries about any of these paints wearing out or anything like that. They've all been heat set. Even so, they're still pretty permanent, which is what you want when you're printing onto fabric. So when I was doing this hexagon pouch, what I had to do was do the first row, the setup row to begin, and then I was then placing underneath and trying to get the gaps as smooth as I could in between, the gaps as even as I could. I think this side was my first attempt. There's a few where it wasn't even, but I think that's the joy, because when you purchase Indian block printed fabrics, there are like misprints and it's a handmade process, isn't it? So that's what makes it so unique. This side is a little bit better, I guess, but we've got some that are close to each other there. But I just absolutely love it. So once I'd done the setup rows, I then just went back in, but you re-ink every time because you can get a second print out of it, but it would be a lot more faded, and it's a little bit more likely that you would have perhaps some areas of print missing. So you do need to reload the block every time. I think at that day, my sister's second item then was a plain bag that she turned into like a checkerboard design. I had the hexagon shape, and then we had also one that was a square with a really nice ornate design in it. So she turned that into a checkerboard design with just black, which did again prove to be quite tricky, because if you get the black on your hands like she kept getting, you get smudges. But now that she's got the pouch in use, she puts all of her notions in hers, and it just looks brilliant. Like, it just has so much character and personality to it. So it is one of those crafts where I think imperfections look brilliant, and you have to embrace those, because if you look at any type of naturally dyed or Indian block printed fabric, there are always imperfections, and that is part and parcel of it. And then a couple of months or 6 weeks or so later, me and my sister got together again with my dad and my stepmom, and we had a block printing day again at her house. And on that day, I decided to try and do another pouch, but make it into kind of like a meadow scene is what I was going for. Let me know in the comments if you can see my vision for this. So again, what I did is some of the stamps you can actually use 2 tones of paint. So all you do is when you're sponging the paint on, you just have to be very careful to ink up the elements that you want, and then you have to work quite quickly so that the first colour doesn't dry, and apply the second colour quite quickly. But you've usually got excess on your sponge that you can just dab back over if you wanted to. I also did the same on this orange flower here. I don't know if you can see quite well that it's actually kind of like darker on the edges of the petal. So that was an effect that I tried. And then yeah, so oh, here's another one where it's 2-tone as well. So I just layered things up, used different shades of green, and I wanted it to look like a meadow or a bit of a hedgerow, and we had this bird that I wanted to use as well. I don't think that bird is from the Indian Block Printing Co. My sister bought that on Etsy, I think. And yeah, I really like this. The pouches that we used were just purchased online, and they're kind of like quite a thick calico or a cotton twill, a really nice thick fabric, so that it will take the paint really nicely. We didn't really get any paint bleeding through. Let me look on the tea towel, because I think perhaps on the tea towel it's much thinner. Yeah, on the tea towel there are bits. I'm trying not to hold it up to the light because then you'll just see the back, but there are some where it has come through. Perhaps it's the darker colours. But I think this is going to be one of those tea towels that's more for decoration. You're not allowed to dry your hands on it. So what I'm going to do is, because now what happens is when we're cooking, my dog will be in the kitchen and she begs up around us to get crumbs and, you know, chopped vegetables and things that we give her. And what she does is she stands up the oven and she pours like that, and if there's a tea towel on there, she drags the tea towel off. So what I think I'm going to do is put it over the rail, the handle of the oven, and just put a few tacking stitches so that it stays there. No one pulls it off to wash their hands on, and it doesn't get used to wipe up crummy stains, and the dog can't knock it off. That is a bit overprotective of me, isn't it? But, you know, I don't care. It's just great fun. It is really good fun to do the block printing. My dad got into it, which I was really surprised at. He made himself a wash bag to go to the gym. I think on that day we all did pouches. He made himself a wash bag. I think my sister did a scene type of one as well, but I'll see if I've got some pictures of that. I didn't take any videos on that day, but I think I did take some pictures. So I'll insert some pictures if I can find them. So I think we ended up with, overall, I think we had maybe 8 or 10 different colours of paints. And we both said that if we did something again, we'd perhaps get some more colours so that we had more colours. We did try and mix some colours. We made a lot of browns and a lot of purples. But she had darker colours and I had more pastel colours. So perhaps if we got something like a Christmas red or a Christmas green, that might give us a little bit of variety. Some maybe middle ground primary colours. And then all you do to clean off the blocks themselves, you just run them under warm water and get like a little nail brush or a scrubbing brush. We used an old toothbrush, and just give them a brush over. I think we used a little bit of washing up liquid as well. And then you just leave them to dry, and they'll just be good to use the next time. But you do want to get the paint off, because sometimes you don't want it drying inside of like the printing area, because that could affect how good the print comes out next time. Then we just put a tea towel down on the side and leave them face up and just let them dry naturally. We didn't submerge the blocks or anything like that. We just done it under running water, because don't forget the back of the block is wood. So also a top tip is don't store your blocks on top of like any fabric, because what happened is they left a little bit of a residue. I don't know if it was like a little bit of moisture, but I think it was only on like a scrap of fabric. It didn't ruin anything. But in the box where I've got the stamps, I put something else with them and it just left a little bit of a brown mark. just staining from the wood. Perhaps the wood is treated with something. So we now keep them in a bag, and then you don't have to worry about that. So I will leave the link down below for the Indian block printing company where we purchased the stamps, the starter kits, all that type of thing from. They also do workshops, so definitely at the Festival of Quilts they offer workshops. They also do demonstrations on their stand, so if you don't need an in-depth sort of demonstration, we just had what they did at the stand. But they've also got a brick and mortar type of facility where they do workshops. I don't know if you can shop in store. You would have to double check and inquire with them on that. And I do know that they also attend lots of other quilt shows around the UK, so just check, see if they're there, Indian Block Printing Co, and see if they're doing any workshops. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Do leave me any comments down below with future Indian block printing projects that I might be able to make, obviously with my own printed fabrics. So yeah, leave those in the comments box, and perhaps that might be a future video idea that we recreate some of your suggestions. So thank you so much for watching. You take care, and bye bye.